just want to keep with my theme of positivity. Not
Go ahead.
that anyone's trying to be negative, that it's very hard to be successful on Amazon. Just like it's very hard to start any business. I think like the amount of businesses that stay in business after a year is like, I don't know, 10, 20%. That means 80% of people fail. And if you do get into this, you probably will fail many times. I have for sure. Most of these influencers and people online don't talk about the failure, but it's definitely there. There's cash flow shows, there are issues, there's account suspension, so it's not easy. But I don't think any business is easy. And I think that while there's these challenges, Amazon and online, especially now, I mean, it's still in its infancy. So there's competition and all the detractors that we mentioned, but there's so much opportunity. Like I've seen people we have clients like literally 4 or 5 dudes in their basement doing hundreds of millions of revenue on Amazon. And they're making a ton of money.
Hey, and welcome to another episode of Kosher Money. If you're new here, we try to help Orthodox Jews and all kinds of Jews and all kinds of non-Jews with their money. And we have an exciting episode today, the big, wonderful world of Amazon. Can you really make money on Amazon? How does it work? Is it too late to get started? What should I know about Amazon? How much money are people making? We had all these questions and we brought in 3 big players in the Amazon market. We had Pearl Osh, Eddie Levine, we had Eitan Wiener, names that people in the Amazon industry know. And I'm excited to help you learn more with the help of my friends, new friends. And I learned a lot about Amazon in this episode. It's a bit of a longer episode, but I think if someone really wants to get into this space, this episode is a must listen. What not to do is just as important what to do. Eitan started a conference specifically helping Amazon sellers, people in that space. It's called the Prosper Show. And he's been involved in Amazon for over 10 years, maybe 15 years. These bios that they sent over just goes on and on about all the different pieces they're involved with as it relates to Amazon. Pearl is very busy with global expansion. If you have an Amazon store, how does it work when you get into other countries and how do you build that out? Eddie Levine was our initial contact in the Amazon space. I think he's been involved in e-commerce for almost 2 decades now. He speaks at conferences. He helped rally Pearl and Eitan over to the studio, and we had a very enlightening conversation. So, without further ado, I give you Pearl, Eitan, and Eddie. Enjoy. Being a Jew, awesome. Managing personal finances, not so awesome. Welcome to Kosher Money. We've never done an episode on Amazon, so I'm excited to do this. People have written in the past. They want to learn more about Amazon, the buying, selling side of things. I've gotten dozens of questions submitted. We had a call last night, which we probably should have recorded because it was spectacular. And in the intro, before I've introduced you already, so people are familiar with what you do. But my first question is, when is my package arriving? Should have been here last night. People, it's synonymous, right? We've come from the 80s, the 90s. It used to take a week, 2 weeks. You submit an envelope and you send it out and you get a package. We're living in a world where Amazon is king, and you guys, girls, know this very well. My first question to each of you is, how did you get into the space? How did you get started? Pearl, I guess we can start with you.
Sure. So I actually was a seller myself quite some time ago, probably 9-10 years ago. So basically what we decided to do was come up with our own chocolate, candy, gift basket line. And where's the best place to market yourself to in front of an audience of millions of people? Amazon, right? Or so we thought, right? We thought it was going to be really, really easy. So basically, we did it according to the holidays. That those were the categories that we were working on. Bottom line is what we were struggling with, and that's the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing now, is the logistics of making it happen. So we were sourcing, let's say, the gift baskets from overseas, and then the candy and whatever. Some of them were coming from also cross country and all that stuff. And where we were struggling was with the assembly. So we decided we're going to actually get a warehouse, rent a space, get the people, all that stuff. And fast forward, we were doing amazingly well. We were doing actually just in the month of December over $1 million in sales in just a 4-week period. But what happened is the rest of the year, the overhead was killing us. And this is why the space of the 3PL space is something that, sellers today are much, more savvy about. And Eddie, that's something that you do.
What's 3PL for those that are unfamiliar? Great
question. It's a third-party logistics warehouse location. Basically, it's a space that many different companies use to do various different things, right? So putting together, let's say, gift baskets, right? I don't think that's something that you specialize in, but you could find a location that specializes in that where they could do the kitting for you, assemble it for you. And if I would have had something like that, I would have cut out the overhead from 3/4 of the year, right? Because what happened is I had 3/4 of the year with a huge overhead that the time it came to my real season, it ate up all my profits. So these are some of the things that I learned and was able to apply to what I do today. So actually what I do is I do global expansion with Amazon. So we help sellers expand businesses overseas. But the whole point is there's so many more resources to, be successful today versus when I was doing it. But the opportunity is there, regardless. And so there's so much to learn. So this is, I took what I learned and we ended up selling the business, not for as much as people are selling their businesses today, not even close. But we had beautiful branding. We sold that part. We learned a lot and we applied it to what we do today.
I have 1,000 questions already,
Sure.
and I'm hoping this is going to be a great hour plus of Amazon learning. Eitan, how did you get into the business?
Yeah, good question. I was in online marketing, like digital marketing. Kind of accidentally got into e-commerce. Started selling on eBay. Then we built a Magento website, and then I kind of hit Amazon. So over the last, I think, 10, 11 years, we'll probably talk about it more today, but I think I did every single Amazon business selling model, from arbitrage to private label to branding to exclusive. So we built the business up over, let's say, from 2010 to 2019, and then I sold it to another company like around 2 years ago.
That's been the common theme so far. People are creating businesses on Amazon and they're selling it.
Yeah, so as Pearl said, it's kind of dying down now, but it was a very, very hot fad for the last 2 years where companies called aggregators were buying companies for crazy multiples and crazy amounts of money. It's a whole separate podcast. But in addition to being an Amazon seller, I also started something called the Prosper Show, which is cool if anyone wants to come and learn about Amazon. It's a global seller show. And as Pearl mentioned, when all of us kind of started selling, there was no support, help, community, or podcasts. Now there's so many, almost too many. So our goal there was to create a show where there's vendors, where there's education, and thank God it grew nicely, and it's a really good place to check out.
That's spectacular. Eddie, how many businesses have you sold in this space so far?
I'm a little bit different. Well, same but different in the sense that I haven't sold my business, but I've rapidly evolved with the times and have progressed throughout the years in different models, like Eitan has. I'd say from how I got into this business, though, it is very much in my blood as being an entrepreneur, as being a...
Well, you do have that Jeff Bezos look.
Yeah, I decided to shave my head a little bit closer than I normally do. So I guess you could say we could be cousins for today's episode. But I remember when I was younger, way before e-commerce, I was not the kid who, ran home from school and wanted to play basketball or anything else. I was the kid who came home from school and I went to the end of my driveway to sell lemonade because it was 50 cents and I could make $5 and $10. And that was a lot when you were, 6, 7, 8 years old. So I did that and I sold everything under the sun. Lemonade, chocolates, wrapping paper, sold things for people that didn't want to do it on eBay. That's a bit later, but I was doing that when I was 12, 13 years old. I started that really was my first venture into e-commerce. That was in 2002, 2003. I'm showing my age here. That's okay. But after the eBay business kind of winded down when I was furthering my educational studies after that, Amazon really popped up, and it popped up when I got back into it in 2012. And similar to Eitan here, I was in pretty much every model under the sun that you could imagine for an Amazon business, whether it be that, arbitrage wholesale or PL, private label type of environment. So have had experience with all of it, and that kind of brings us to where we are today, which is that we are sellers ourselves, but we offer services to other brands and sellers as well, including brand management on the platform and also the third-party logistics that Pearl was referring to for warehousing and needs like that.
So the elephant in the room, and this is the question I was receiving the most of, is can I become extremely wealthy from Amazon, right? I love my 9 to 5. I like my 9 to 5. I dislike my 9 to 5. I hear people are selling on Amazon. Is that something I can get into part-time and have an additional revenue stream for my family? I'd love to chew on that for a little bit. Eddie, someone approaches you. They come into one of Eitan's conferences and they say, I want to make it big on Amazon. What's your answer today, and has that changed over the years?
I think my answer today definitely has changed over the years. If you were to have asked me that same question, let's say 5 years ago, I would have said there's a lot of people in the marketplace today that do this as a hobby or as a second, source of income. And I guess my answer is that it changes and it doesn't change. It doesn't change in the fact that there are still a lot of hobby sellers, people who are not doing it full time. That's a fact. But the other side of the coin is that there are so many more who are doing it full time, and the marketplace has become very competitive to the point that I think to do it on a part-time basis and expect such drastic boosts of income or drastic changes into your life when you're not putting forward or not able to have the full-time go at it is what's challenging these days.
So what happened there? It used to be in the past, Pearl, where I just went to Alibaba's website, bought a ton of merchandise, probably didn't even ever see the merchandise, listed on another website, and from there I'm, coming home telling my wife, yeah, I made $100,000 today, and I didn't even touch a product.
Right. So when Amazon started, right, they wanted to scale this business, obviously, right? They first started out as just selling books, right? So when they started out, it was like whatever you could possibly get your hands on, right? You went to Costco or you went to Target or wherever and you found a good deal. You went on Amazon, you listed it, flipped it. Great. Worked very nicely. But when you have so many more people doing the same thing, what happens is it starts putting a bunch of, headlights into these big brands that you're actually, selling their stuff. And they're like, wait, we have to get a handle on this, right? What's going on? Firstly, let's talk a second about, let's say, electronics, right? You have electronics. You had Apple all of a sudden, having people reselling their stuff, or Dell or whatever, and people had warranties that actually didn't belong to them, right? They had warranties that belonged to the person that actually bought it originally, and now somebody's selling it on Amazon. What do you do, right? So that was an issue a lot of these electronic brands were dealing with. So you have one thing like that, and then you have companies that have map pricing. Let's go to the Bugaboo carriages, right? I think that's going to speak to, let's say, the Lakewood audience, or
Sure.
To the Brooklyn audience, right? They have something called map pricing. You want to buy a carriage, right? That's fine, but you're never going to find the price of the carriage changing anywhere. Why? Because they have a really big handle on those carriages, or the Atlanta shoes, right? Maybe a lot of the audience is kids wear those shoes. You're never going to find somebody selling it for cheaper. Why? The company has a handle on the prices. They don't want somebody to go and cheapen their brand, right? So that's the issue. So people were selling it on Amazon, right? You were selling it, Ellie's selling it, Eddie's selling it, and then you have 100 other people doing the same thing, right? People are going to collect all the good items they can find in Costco, and it starts becoming a price war. Everybody wants to get a sale, right? They want you to buy it from their list.
Doesn't sound like I can make much money on that.
Exactly. That's one issue. Or the other issue is people have to get rid of it. So they're going to start selling it under the value of what the company wants you to actually sell it. It devalues their item, right? So the company starts seeing these things, and they start putting in violations to Amazon, and they start reaching out to Amazon saying, look, it's your platform, you have to take responsibility for it. So that's when Amazon started becoming much more stringent with their rules and started saying, guess what? You actually can't sell this brand anymore. And they started, closing down certain listings and starting to give people seller performance notifications where either they shut them down or they were gated for a certain category. They couldn't sell it, for that category or whatever. So this is when, the side hustle became it's not a side hustle anymore. You got to become a little bit more creative and figure out, instead of just reselling, this phone, let me actually create something on my own, right? Let me start figuring out how can I source this product, actually come out with my own brand, logo, identity. And, you could build something like what Eddie mentioned earlier, private label is something that's the dominant, category or way of selling on Amazon right now, where create your own thing. Hopefully somebody is not going to replicate it if it's not, easy enough to do that. But that's what's happening now. So this is where it was, and that's, where it's at right now. It's not so easy as it used to be.
Right. So practically, if someone's listening, they have this idea for a kitchen apron that glows in the dark, and they want to create the product. They do a search. They can't find anything similar to that. What can they practically do to establish relationships? And I open this up to, you each have your own skill sets within this vertical. What can they practically do to get started? Maybe know if it is something that they should go after. Everyone has ideas, but it comes down to execution. But maybe not invest your grandfather's $20,000 into something that you'll be back to square one tomorrow. Where should they start, and how should they know even if it's a good idea?
Yeah, so we spoke about this last night, and Pearl mentioned it too, where there's this concept, or in the evolution of Amazon sellers, where you can go on Alibaba and find something cool and put your own name on it. But what you just mentioned is different, where you have this new idea. You could still go to Alibaba and find something similar and have a factory modify it. But thankfully, there's many tools, which we could list, that help you do these things. So you could do advanced research with probably hundreds of different tools on which keywords are trending or ranking. Or if you were to make X product, how much would it sell? And it's really data and math driven. Now there's a lot of variables like advertising and cost of inventory and logistics challenges. But the cool thing is, despite all the difficulties that Pearl mentioned, it's a huge opportunity. So just to touch on your last question, no, it's not an overnight success, and it's not a side hustle, in my opinion, strongly. That just doesn't work. But if you spend time and you use all the tools out there and the community that exists, you can make a lot of money. My business audits sellers for discrepancies and issues. I speak to many sellers, and I see a few guys in their basement that are doing hundreds of millions of revenue. And then I see companies that have 100 people that are doing 3 million in revenue. So it really depends on how you align and what you focus on. But certainly it has to be, in my opinion, a real business, because, coming home with your wife saying you made 100 grand, that same person will probably lose 100 grand in the next 2-3 weeks because of all the changes that we mentioned. So it's like a real business. It's not, child's play.
Right. You mentioned factories, right? If someone was to create something, and I have a neighbor who is in the space, he has his own e-commerce website. He sells on Amazon as well. And I remember a few years ago, every 10 months, he would tell me, oh, I'm flying to China tomorrow. Now with COVID and their strict policies, getting into China is not easy, which makes and exacerbates the building of relationships with these factories. So how do you jump over that hump if you feel like you've done what you've described, you've done the research, and the people you've reached out to say you do have an idea here? How do you develop that relationship so you can create a good product at a good price?
I think the key element here is to understand that it's not just you that's going to be impacted by the issues related to COVID and the issues that come out of China. Everyone's got that same issue. Unless you're a Chinese passport holder, you are not getting into the country, have not been able to get into the country for the last 2+ years. So everyone's sort of on this level playing field, even though everyone's fighting this uphill battle in terms of not being able to be boots on the ground. That's number one. Number two, China's economy is dependent on foreign exports, or the exports they do to foreign countries of materials and product. That their economy revolves around what they manufacture, what they make, what they send out. So not having the ability to have people come into their country to conduct commerce is definitely hurting them as well. And there's many factories that have gone belly up over COVID. They just didn't survive, similar to many businesses, unfortunately, on our side, that for one reason or another, they didn't survive. Like e-commerce or not, doesn't matter, just saying business in general. So I think my point to this is that you're not so much on a disadvantage because of COVID and because China being closed. It's almost more of a question of making do with the current situation and trying to find alternate ways to communicate and conduct business, because you can't go there yourself, but the Chinese companies need your business to survive, and therefore they're going to make adaptations to be able to retain your business and be able to continue working together somehow, some way. It's not like they're, everything is fine on their side as well. So I guess I turn that question into more of a positive statement, in the sense that it's not doom and gloom in that sense.
Are there other countries to look at besides China if someone was to want to develop a product?
Look, you can certainly look at other countries. You can look at some of the other ones that have been looked at most commonly that I've seen. India, Mexico. In our industry, there's leaders in our space who have led trips to these countries and have tried to educate sellers on the uniqueness and the intricacies of working with different countries. And I support that. I think that's a great thing to diversify. Whether you want to do that to other countries abroad or here at home, that's your decision as a business owner. I would just make a blanket statement here that, if you pull all the sellers in the market and all, not just sellers, I should say, all businesses that make product, you'll find still an overwhelmingly large amount of businesses that do source from China. That's just because of the nature of the game and how long they've been in the manufacturing space, that they've developed their country on this. And this is not something that even a pandemic over 2 years is going to be able to uproot and change. Right. I think we talked a little bit about yesterday. I think the true impacts of COVID, what it does for us domestically, what it does for them internationally, how it changes or evolves the process of sourcing product. I don't think we know exactly what that's going to look like yet. I think it's early. When COVID, knock on wood, COVID is on the downswing right now, and it's not as bad as it used to be. But until we're, I think, much further past this and we have a chance for businesses in general to normalize, I think we'll start seeing the true impacts of what COVID did. Mm-hmm. I think it's premature to speculate.
Yeah, I agree on that.
Pearl, you mentioned that you're busy with global expansion. To me, what does that even mean? Because if I'm a seller and putting a product on Amazon, let Amazon put it into every country, every city across the world, and they'll just pay more for shipping, right? What does that mean to be to have a successful product within the U.S. and then say, I want to do more business in Brazil, Israel, and so on?
Sure. Great question. So, I like giving this example of, let's say when you're traveling to Mexico, right? Going on a nice vacation with your wife, and you're on the plane, you're ready to get off, and the stewardess comes to you with your customs declaration form, right? You have to start the clearing of, exactly what's in your suitcases or what's actually on you, anything expensive that you need to declare. Now, I know myself, when I do that, I start freaking out. It's like, am I putting down the values right? Do I know what I'm doing here? Anytime you're importing into a new country, there's actually, an import tax. You have to declare it a certain way. So same idea as like when people travel, packages travel as well. So when I'm selling in the US marketplace and I'm shipping into Amazon's US marketplace, Amazon does have a shipping program where they have different carriers that are integrated into their system, which they call Seller Central, where you log in, you're able to list your items, ship in the items that you want them to fulfill for you. It's called FBA.
And what does that stand for?
Fulfillment by Amazon.
Okay.
Where basically you're shipping into their warehouse locations, and then when a customer places an order, they take over.
I saw a new warehouse pop up here in the 5 towns, Amazon.
Yeah, that's it.
I guess there are third-party warehouses, but then there's also Amazon-fueled.
Exactly. So something like what Eddie would do is he would get, let's say, containers from overseas. Let's say people bringing it from China, and then he would probably help ship into Amazon for these people, or do direct-to-consumer if they're doing individual orders. But for the most part, most people selling on Amazon do FBA. It's just easier, and they have such crazy rules on how fast it needs to arrive to your customer. Like you mentioned, how quickly things arrive to people's doors. Mm-hmm. That's FBA, basically facilitating all of it.
Can I just interrupt you for 1 second?
Sure.
Just to point out something here about FBA I think is important. One of the common questions is that I get from a lot of people who want to start this business is why do you need FBA? What's the point of it? If you can ship yourself, it just seems like it's redundant, right?
Yeah, I'll use FedEx or UPS.
Yeah, but the thing is here, you mentioned Amazon with all these warehouses. It's important to note that Amazon's got hundreds of these in the nation, all built up now, all in almost every state. I think there's 50 states now, 48, something like that.
Amazon will own a state at some point.
Pretty
so,
much.
Yeah.
Pretty much. And I think what's important to note here is that when sellers send in goods to FBA, like you were mentioning, they might be sending to 1, 2, 3 locations, but Amazon, from the moment that stock arrives into that fulfillment center or those 2 or 3 fulfillment centers until it's sold to the customer, and that could be weeks or months later, that stock is constantly rotating between dozens and dozens of more facilities because Amazon is setting up your inventory and frankly all sellers' inventory to be a just-in-time model from wherever the buyer is.
So my product will move from New York to Connecticut regardless of whether I've sold a product because they want to be ready in case Connecticut people are.
But if you've got a customer who wants to place the order, that's how they can ensure that it gets there in that prime speed. Otherwise, you're shipping across the country left and right. And is it a perfect model? No, of course. I mean, there's products that at some point or another, a certain day, a certain product is going to take an extra day or two. That's the reality of life, right? No logistics operation in that scale, I think, is flawless. As much as Amazon will claim that they're flawless, they're not. And I think that sellers need to realize when thinking about that FBA program and the benefits to it, that's a key element of it in the sense that buyers are now trained to expect goods within hours. Forget days.
We're so
that's
spoiled.
not a thing anymore.
That's all I'm thinking about as you go.
Right. And suddenly when you've got to wait for a product for 2, 3, 4 days, that
God
just
forbid.
becomes intolerable.
Yeah.
So sorry to cut you off, Pro.
No, you're good. So continuing with that,
Yeah.
right? So the problem or the issues some sellers are facing with certain categories is that the Amazon US market is so saturated, right? And they want to look for more opportunity of, expanding their business and not necessarily I have to create a brand new category or create a brand new product. I could actually take my product and see what other opportunities does Amazon have. So Amazon actually has 18 marketplaces throughout the world. So they have in Canada, in the UK, Australia, Singapore, UAE, etc. There's so many of them.
What does that mean, marketplace? That means
They literally have Amazon. There's Amazon.com, right? And then there's Amazon.au, Amazon.ca. Total different marketplace. Nothing to do with Amazon.com.
What happens in a country that doesn't have a marketplace? They're not able to receive Amazon goods?
So there might be an option where the seller, let's say, fulfills it themselves from the US and they say, okay, I ship out of the country, and then they go onto DHL's website or whatever and they create a label. But that's something that's going to be very expensive for somebody. Let's say if you're ordering from Amazon Canada, right? It might be very expensive for you to order it because it's not FBA. So what Amazon has is they have these FBA options in these countries as well. Now, the only difference is, like I mentioned earlier, Amazon has integrated carrier options in the US where I want to ship into FBA, right? I want to ship into Amazon's warehouses. I sell in the US. I'm based in the US. I could buy either UPS shipping through Amazon, very, very cheap, or FedEx, or they have different carrier like trucking options that I could purchase through them, and then it ships into the US market. But when it comes to I want to do FBA in Canada, Amazon does not provide you with shipping options. The reason being, they don't want to get involved with customs. Like I was saying about customs, let's say you traveling into Mexico and dealing with that on a personal level, imagine dealing on a commercial level, right? So typically the way it works with the international market is that somebody that receives the shipment is the responsible party for the shipment, is the importer, sort of, as they call it, and is the person that's responsible to pay for the taxes. So I don't know if you ever ordered something from overseas, and DHL or UPS called you before they made delivery and said, okay, you actually have, let's say, $50 that you owe before we deliver because of the taxes. So that's normally how it works. Now, being that Amazon is the one receiving these packages overseas, they don't want to take care of anything shipping related. They don't want to pay for the taxes. They don't want to be the importer. They don't want to get anything related to government or bureaucratic stuff. They don't want to get involved. So what they say is you have to figure out how to ship it yourself. So this opportunity of, let's say, selling in Canada is huge for people, right? They're in a U.S. market. It's very saturated. They're selling, let's say, these cups. Hundreds of sellers are selling these cups. They go onto Amazon.ca and they see only 20 people selling these cups. And actually, I could sell it for even more because less people fighting over this listing, I could sell it for more, better margins. So they actually have to go find a option how to ship it. So this is where we come in. So we actually are Amazon's #1 recommended provider for this, where Amazon will send us these clients that they're scouting to sell globally, and they'll say, cool, first choice shipping. They'll help you with everything. So it's not just the logistics part of it. It's not just the shipping part. There's so many different moving parts. There's the product compliance. Can I actually ship this product globally? Some countries have different rules for different things. So let's say if I'm shipping it to Japan, right? Japan is crazy when it comes to customs. Anything that literally touches the body or goes into the body is, you can't get it through customs. So there's different ways on how to go about it. Special licensing, special certifications, things like that. So that's something that we help people navigate through. So the opportunity is huge. Why? Because so many people don't want to get involved with all these little details, right? And then the shipping part of it. So, and then of course the saturation part, right? So if you're dealing with a lot less sellers, and the Japanese market happens to be, by the way, is the second to largest marketplace after the .com. So there's a lot of opportunity, not just on .com, but yeah, that's basically what we specialize in.
We spoke before about private labels. Is that your recommendation if someone was to want to get into this space? Is that the best way now to make money as a seller, to create your own product? I just want to, for those that will follow up and want clarity on that.
Amazon has become a brand focused platform. All the tools that they've developed, all the resources they've put in place, all the teams that they've built out have been developed to service different aspects of the business, but they are targeting the brand owners. You should have something that is uniquely you, that you own. And it's not to say that as a non-brand owner, you can't sell on the platform. You certainly can. You just be at a stark disadvantage to those with brands, just because you don't have access to all of the things that brand owners have. And like I was mentioning earlier in the podcast, with Amazon becoming, frankly it already is, but continuing to become more and more competitive in almost every category, frankly every category, not having all of those tools and levers to pull for your business is, I think, going to be detrimental.
You just want to add, I don't know if we mentioned this category last night, but this is something I like to say, because to your point, it's hard to get in the game. There's a lot of competition for all the reasons we spoke about. There's a lot of businesses here and everywhere that are old school, right? Businesses that are brick and mortar, retail, or, my dad has a plumbing business, or, all these like different types of businesses, and they're just old school. So let's say plumbing, I like to say, for example, you can catalog all the plumbing parts in the world and list them on Amazon. I'm sure some people have tried. But despite the saturation in products, like people have old school businesses, they're still not online yet. Like it's going to take another 20, 30 years. Those are the opportunities. I used to do that, work in like niche telecom and areas where they're just not online. So if you, own a certain space in the brick and mortar world, which is not fully online, and I'm sure there's a lot of people, in the community or in the area that just have, B2B wholesale businesses or retail businesses, they're just not in e-commerce. So it's kind of like a brand, but it's not like what you said, I'm going to make a new brand with an apron. It's like, I already have a brand. I sell medical supplies to nursing homes. Why is it not all on Amazon? You'll make direct-to-consumer margins. You already have a product. You just have to change. Now, that's not easy, and you need help, and you got to go to international, and you need 3PL, but it's very doable. And that's where I see a lot of success, when people make the proper pivot. So that's just low-hanging for people who already have profitable businesses. They need to evolve, right? COVID showed that. They need to evolve. And it's not as hard. To do what you mentioned is also doable, but harder, right? Because you have to create a brand, create a design, create a strategy. Also doable, but not as low-hanging.
It's two other points about products in general. There's a big difference between private label, PL, as we refer to it in the industry, and white label. White label being product already exists, you're changing nothing but slapping a label on an existing product and calling it yours. That's not private label. That is, like I said, white label. There's nothing unique about it. You're likely facing lots of competition. There's no difference between your product and someone else's other than what it says on the box. Private label, something uniquely you. You've changed something, you've improved something, you've brought something out from scratch, something that makes it intricate, unique, something that's, best case scenario you can protect somehow, right? You've got some claim to fame here. That's point number one. point number 2 is that in this quest for developing your next, or first for that matter, private label product, you can't get married to a product either just because you think it's cool.
It glows in the dark.
It doesn't matter. I mean, you might think it's cool.
Right.
I might think it's cool. Pro might think it's cool. It doesn't matter. The fact here remains that the only person it matters to in terms of how cool it is the customer. You know, I have mentored a lot of people in this industry, and young and old and everywhere in between, right? And the common theme is that I see in terms of one of the ways that people trip up is the fact that they get married to this idea. As I mentioned, it's going to solve this issue in the marketplace, and it's the greatest thing ever. But the fact of the matter is, if there's not a demand for this, you need to understand the market intelligence and the data, which there's tons of software tools. That's another podcast we can do out there to help Amazon sellers and would-be sellers understand this market. But if you're not going to take the time to review that data and really use it to your advantage to try to start or grow your business, you're already failing before you started because you're not targeting it the correct way. People that walk through my warehouse, especially, you know, this day and age, but even when we were younger, they would ask me almost the same question every single time. What do you sell? And my answer is always the same. I sell whatever sells. I don't care what I sell because at the end of the day, it matters more what the consumer wants. So, you know, you can walk through my warehouse today similar to where we were years ago, in the sense that I've got everything from pretty much every category on the shelf because, well, if it's ours, then it's one thing, but if it's our clients, it's another. But everyone's in a diverse category. And the smart sellers, the ones who are doing it right, they've got a niche that they're proud of, and they've, you know, there's certainly you can be happy with their success, but you know, again, the product that you bring to market has to solve a customer need. If it's something that just solves your need and no one else cares, you've got a problem.
We'll be right back to this week's episode on Amazon, but first, I want you to Google Shmuel Shayewitz's name. Yaakov, take a look at this. 4 hours ago, and then click on the news tab. Equity sharing lets homeowners sell a slice of their house. Should they? Mortgage recast. How to save money. Time to worry that real estate will crash like it did in 2008. He knows a lot.
Yeah, these are articles by him, and more than that, his social media presence. He's great. He really breaks it down and gives a very easy to understand what the market's like, how to actually go ahead and increase your real estate portfolio.
So let me give you an example. I bought my house in 2016 at $715,000, have a mortgage, and the house I could probably get, if I were to sell, which I'm not, I could probably get over $1 million for it.
Yeah.
So should I
Where would you move?
Um,
Down the block?
No, probably still in the 5 towns, but anything I'm going to buy right now would probably be just as costly. But that said, if I wanted to take equity or take money out of the house and maybe invest it into buying a small apartment and generate some income, who would I ask about that?
Shmuel
Shayowitz. There you go. He's over at Approved Funding, approvedfunding.com/mortgages. Reach out to him. People who want to invest in real estate, want to get a better understanding of how it works. He's very, very resourceful, knowledgeable, and he's accessible.
You know what's also great about him? He doesn't pressure you. A lot of times you speak to someone who it's in their very best interest for you to go ahead and do a deal with them or you use them for work, but he truly is not there to help himself. He's really there to help you. And if you have any questions, you're not really sure, just give him a call. He's so easy to talk to, or go onto his website.
Approvedfunding.com. And now back to this week's episode. So let's say you create that, right? You create a product that solves a customer's need. You're excited. It's going well for a week, a month, a year. You wake up one day, there's 15 copycats, beating you on price. I'm just a day away from going back to being a 9-to-5 accountant. What's there to protect me, if anything, for these folks that are searching just as well as you to see what's selling and copycatting you.
Yeah, so Eddie said it well. There's the creation and all the reasons why you should make something based on supply and demand. But then the maintenance is actually harder. Not to scare anyone, it just is. Meaning, yeah, 10, 20 people can copy you. They can go to the same factory. They can look at your shipping documents. Like there's no end. There's Chinese sellers. There's threats. This is where it gets hard. So there's trademarking of a name. There's patenting, which is more expensive and sophisticated. Even those work, but just to get someone kicked off the listing or to let Amazon an appeal, I mean, it could take sometimes weeks or months or years. So the real way to do it is, I mean, it's usually like the case in business, like just try to do the best you can with your own, within reason. There's always competition in the world, right? If people see what you're doing, they're going to try to copy it. It's just dynamically different online. But for sure, take those measures to make sure you're protected. And most importantly, you have to monitor the landscape. So every day, you have to use these tools to check your sales and who is competing. And we didn't speak about this yet, but most of Amazon sales now are driven by advertising, like Google, pay-per-click. It used to not be like that. In the good old days, I used to sell on Amazon. You don't have to pay. Now you pay 10, 20, 30% of your retail price in advertising. So you have to be on top of advertising. You have to be on top of competition and tools. If you're not, it's very difficult. If you have something that's so unique, okay, that's great, but that's very rare.
You bring up an interesting point, and actually, it came back to me because before we recorded this podcast, I was in Florida for a few days, and I went to a store actually to buy a product, specific brand that I was looking for, and I went up to the clerk because I didn't see it on the shelf. Normally, I know the store carries it. I said, "Do you happen to have this product? Because I've seen it here before. I bought it here before. I just need another one." And he looks at me and says, "Oh, we've discontinued our partnership with that brand. We don't carry it anymore." And I said, "Oh, I mean, is there a problem with the product? Is it, is it?" And I wasn't aware of anything. He said, "No, we're just making our own."
Wow.
And now that you mention it, it's light bulb in my head because I didn't think anything of it yesterday. I just said, okay, well, whatever. They're bringing something else out, different option. But now it kind of makes sense because this store, right? This merchant, whether they're only brick and mortar or also e-commerce, I don't know exactly if they are or not. They've figured out that there's value in bringing their own product to market that they own, that their margins are easily, probably significantly better. And they've got long-term sustainability. They've got a product they know will sell because they've been selling a similar one already. They've probably done enhancements and changes that, he actually told me to my face. He said, we're bringing out our one that's going to be different colors, different sizes, different features. So, the more I think about that conversation, it didn't even hit me at the time, but it's exactly what we're talking about. And that was in a brick and mortar setting. Can you imagine in e-commerce?
That's disheartening to me. I'm scared because if I was to put my love and money into, a product and building it up, I could wake up a day, and I guess I'm rehashing this point, but that's scary for me to want to get into a business that you're telling me I need to put 110% in, and that could be ripped out from under me in a flash.
Here's the thing, what I would say to you about that. Forget e-commerce. Any business is risky. Any business, it carries risks, the unknowns, the fears, to be a business owner, it takes a certain caliber as a person. Forget what you're doing, what service you're providing, what product you're making, it doesn't matter. That's why the 9-to-5 job for certain people exists, and there's nothing wrong with that. Certain people just are not entrepreneurs, and that's fine. I mean, the world goes around many different ways, and we for the most part, we find ways to work with each other. But it's something that I think as a business owner, if you're looking to get into this business or start it, grow it, whatever the current stages of your journey, to expect that the business is going to be risk-free or not worrisome at times, especially in e-commerce Amazon business, I think you likely have the wrong expectations.
Understood.
Yeah, I think you could say that. I'm sorry, Tom. I think you could say that with every business. I don't know if you know this, but Amazon tried making diapers, baby diapers.
Remember that? They bought
a couple years ago.
Diapers.com.
They ended up buying off diapers.com because it didn't work out.
Oh.
So they actually, they're collecting data, right? After all is said and done, whatever they're doing, they're collecting mountains and mountains of data or countries of data. So obviously, diapers is something that everybody needs. So they decided they're going to make their own line, and this was a couple of years ago, and it failed really, really badly. Okay, Amazon failed really badly.
At Amazon.
Right? At Amazon. So I think that proves a point where it's, you could have all the money and all the resources, but if you don't have that team and that structure or the idea and the packaging to go along with it and the marketing to go along with it, you could fail flat on your face, even if you're Amazon. And they ended up buying golfdiapers.com or pampers.com. I'm not sure which name they go by. But the point is that if you are laser focused, you have a vision, you know where you're heading to, and you have a brand that speaks for itself, there isn't much to worry about. And that's something that I'm also very busy with my team internally. I'm the chief operating officer, or in the EOS method, we call it the integrator, where if we have, a 3, 5, 10-year vision plan, and we know where we're going. I remember when I was learning to drive for the first time, and I kept looking to the side of the road to see if the cars are crashing into me. My husband's like, look straight ahead. As long as you look straight ahead, nobody's crashing into you. And I think that's with everything in life, right? So it's the same with a product. It's the same with any business. As long as you know where you're heading to, nobody could come in your way. And obviously, you can't be a fool. You have to know what you're doing. Like Eitan said, you have to be on top of things and follow whatever tools you have and take the data and use it to your advantage. But to always be afraid of what's behind you, that's something that's never going to work.
I think it's to be successful. I think you just can't look at the what ifs, what could happen, the worst case scenarios. I think as a responsible business owner, I mean, I'm trying to think back a few years ago. The number one question I would get asked, this is pre-COVID when the conferences were, going on all the time, and now they're getting back into place. But one of the core questions that I would get asked by new sellers and people looking to start this business was, well, aren't you worried that it could just disappear one day and Amazon could suspend you, or they could do this, that, and the other thing? And because Amazon has their performance teams and their expectations, which new sellers sometimes don't read carefully, and they make missteps and they face the consequences. And yeah, I mean, do they suspend the sellers, and do sellers lose things sometimes overnight? Yeah, absolutely. But I can't operate my business, and nor do I choose to live my life thinking about what ifs, because like Pearl said, you have to be razor focused forward. I think if you live in a situation where you're worried about what could happen, and I understand that sometimes it's not easy to take your mind off of that, but you got to try. I think if you are constantly thinking about that, you're going to make it impossible for yourself to move forward. So what if Amazon suspends me tomorrow? Well, then I'll deal with that tomorrow. Right now, it's not a fire that's burning right now, so we're going to keep trucking.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's the difference between a 9-to-5er and an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
That's what you got to deal with.
I was just going to add, to address your concerns or fear, which are valid, is that
They've dissipated since they've gotten this therapy.
Those are more encouraging words. This is, I think, a little more practical in that, yes, 25 people may copy you. Amazon has hundreds of millions, or you could argue billions of customers. So like, how much do you need, right? If you make this phone case, I was looking at a phone case today, there's like 19 versions of Pixel phone cases, but they're all, and I know the data, right? I kind of know the game. They're all selling very well because they all have a different niche. Some use different keywords to appeal to different customers, women, men, you name it, different countries, different styles, children. So there's subtleties. You could use different keywords, you could use different colors. You could list in Japan. Like, there's so many shades, and furthermore, again, per our conversation last night, we're talking about Amazon now, I know, but I'll digress a bit to other channels. You can create your own Shopify store, your own website, and get your own audience from Instagram or Facebook or Google Ads, and you create your own destiny. So Amazon's a bit crowded, and I know this is a separate topic of other channels, but it's necessary because, yeah, if you're just on Amazon, you will have immense competition, and you don't fully control your destiny, but if you diversify, you certainly can.
There's an interesting statement that you make there with the phone cases, because I'm thinking back to when I buy phone cases online regularly when I get a new phone or need a new case or whatever. My search usually starts with whatever color you want, whatever model phone you have, phone case, right? So blue iPhone, what are we on, 13 now? iPhone 13 phone case, right? So I'll get the results for that, and you can guarantee the person who's on top of there is paying a fortune for ads and pumping out a lot of money to try to
I
be
never
there
click
because
on those ads. I always feel like I'm getting a higher markup if it's sponsored. So I'm like, I'll go to the first organic result.
You're the minority on that because
Am I educated though, or that's not necessarily
Most
true?
people
think
don't know
you're
to know that there's an
right.
ad. They just they
okay.
roll with it.
Right. So my point here is that if I search blue iPhone 13 phone case, okay, I get the results, but suddenly I want this one because this one's molded differently, or I want this one because this one has a grip, or this one has this one has a cutout, this one, things that I would have never searched for that these sellers are now marketing their product because they know this would be a cool thing that, the buyers will be receptive to. I would have never searched for this kind of, this product in this fashion, right? But sellers are smart, and sellers have learned ways to try to market their product outside of how you would typically think to describe them. And I think that that's what truly makes those sellers, and even selling similar products, I think that's what makes a lot of them successful, is when they're able to differentiate in certain ways.
Let's do a few rapid fire questions before we get back into it. If someone was to create a store today, how quickly, if they were to input their different products, how quickly can they get that launched? Are we talking here it takes a month, 3 months, a week, a day? What's the turnaround time if they got their hands on inventory, their grandfather has a plumbing supply and he wants to get that store up? How long does it take? Does Amazon charge them to create a store? And what percentage does Amazon take on a purchase?
Like Eddie could answer that question, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's a broad question. It depends on the
I'm looking for
product.
very specific answers. Give me a number. No, but go ahead.
Yeah.
Rapid fire.
Yeah.
My answer is it depends. That's how rapid you're going to get.
Okay, go ahead.
No, it depends. It depends on the product. It depends on the kind of material it is. It depends on where it's coming from. Different suppliers have different lead times, right? So you could, if you're going to do a small product that's kind of off the shelf and they've got a mold ready to go and they can manufacture it quickly, and especially if it's small and they're going to air freight it over here and it's cost effective, I mean, you're talking a few weeks probably. If it's like normal products that you have to do the design on it, craft it, make a mold, and then test it and all that stuff, you could be looking at several months for it to be launched effectively, and then even more time to get it selling and profitable, right? Hopefully, if everything works out well. Again, it really, really depends. It strongly depends on the product it is. Your question in terms of how much does it cost, again, depends on the category. Amazon charges they call it a referral fee, which is basically their commission for using their platform.
And that's on an actual purchase.
On a
to
purchase.
put up the page, it's free.
To put up the page is free. To build the store, to make your account is free, except for if you're a professional account, there's a small monthly fee, but that's sort of irrelevant here. To build the listing itself doesn't cost anything to list it for sale. Now if you're going to use the FBA program that we've talked about and you're going to send product to Amazon, they're going to charge you for storage space on a monthly basis. So don't let it sit there for months and months and months without sales, or you're going to pay for that warehouse space, right? So you've got those, but then from the referral fee perspective, their commission, depending on the category, I think the average is anywhere between 8 and 15 to 18%. Off the sales price, but on top of, you've got several things to consider. You've got product cost, you've got logistics cost, you've got testing costs, inspection costs, etc. You've got Amazon referral fees, their commissions, you've got FBA fees, and you've got ad costs. Those are 6 things, and certainly not all of them, that you've got to consider when you're bringing a product to market and trying to launch it. There's more. There's, if you've got people working for you, there's salaries, there's insurance, I don't have enough fingers to count, but all these things have to be considered.
Go ahead, bro.
That's the mistake most people make, right? They look at making an investment and they count it, till it actually arrives at the port, and they forget how much it actually costs to start running it on Amazon. All those things you just mentioned, you could double whatever your investment you anticipated to have, right? The Amazon advertising cost alone make the numbers. It's something you have to take into account when you're investing, that's going to cost.
And think about it. There's a lot of things that can change that are unexpected. I think the number one thing that changed for most sellers last year and the year before during COVID is the logistical cost. You go back to 2018, 2019, shipping a full container, a 40-foot container from China overseas to the U.S., depending on where it was going, West Coast or Midwest or East Coast, anywhere from $3,500 to $6,000 maybe is your high end, right, to get it into the U.S. and it delivered. I mean, at the height of COVID, worst case scenario, there was people paying more than $30,000 for a container. So you're talking 5x on logistics costs alone. I don't know of many sellers who have the ability to pay 5x in terms of logistics and still remain profitable
Yeah,
on
it
a
was a
lot of
nightmare.
products. I mean, people had to discontinue products left and right, or had to change their pivot and et cetera. So there's risks there. But now we're in a stage of hopefully continued normalization to for lack of a better term, where it's certainly not $30,000 to send in a container anymore, but the days of $3,000 to $5,000 containers, I don't think we'll see them again. There's been a lot of write-ups and a lot of insight from the shipping carriers alone when they say we can't make money on that. We've been losing money on that, frankly. Now you see costs at 7, 8, 10, 12,000, something around there, which is the going rate these days. What it'll be in 6 months, a year, we don't know. But you can't just assume that the costs you have today is what's going to be what it's going to be, in the future. Right? You've got to be able to adapt and have a strategy in place for when things do change.
Just to set up a different light on it, not that this is negative, it's practical, but you said, how long does it take account to set up? We could go right now, put in our name, email. If you're looks like you're a normal U.S. citizen with no issues or credit issues, you could be selling in a few hours. Sometimes Amazon will profile you because they don't want fraud. So if you start selling and you do $10,000 in 2 hours, they'll slow it down. But from
That's if you have the product.
From entrepreneurial side, yeah, if you have the product, we're not talking about the product. Let's say you just
father's plumbing store.
Yeah.
You know?
My father's actually a doctor. I don't know why I said my father's plumber, but it's like, the father that's a plumber.
I do have some questions from a friend who is a plumber. He wanted to talk about like professional installation, and there's a whole marketplace for people like a plumber that can get into it. But yeah, continue your point.
Okay, for sure. I actually like the plumbing topic. It's my good example. We could set it up right now. We could start selling a few $1,000s a day. Eddie mentioned the fees. Again, you just got to be careful as you scale and grow up because of all the restrictions that we mentioned as well. But if you have your hands on inventory and you want to sell, you list it, you sell it, they take their fee, you get paid in usually 2 weeks, and you have a business. So that's the positive side.
So you don't need $150,000 to get started in the Amazon space, right?
No, absolutely not.
No,
Depending what kind of level you want to start at. There are some people that go to Home Depot still,
Right.
And they'll buy some things and they'll resell it. I actually know someone that's doing that now.
Right.
And it's working for him.
Right.
But then, if you're thinking scalability and actually owning your own brand and something that not tomorrow this brand that you're reselling is going to say, oh, sorry, you can't do that anymore, then you probably want to invest with time. Maybe that's a good way of you getting some cash flow and then you're going to invest further. But it's possible.
You can learn the system that way too, without having to wait months or invest thousands of
exactly.
dollars.
It's like a training ground for success.
Training wheels.
Interesting. At what point should someone say, this is not working out, this is not for me, I don't have the right strategy? If it goes a week and it's not being successful, I would imagine they're going to continue, but maybe it's not a level of time, but in certain markers they should look out for along the way that, let me put my energy into another space. Amazon is not for me. What would you advise someone who is getting started, or is it really case dependent?
I don't think it entirely is something that you can put a time limit on, because I think that someone who is deciding their fate of their business just by how long they've individually tried something is kidding themselves, because I think you mentioned this earlier in the call, but thinking back to when I started Amazon in 2012, really from 2012 to 2014, 2015, there was no e-commerce community. It didn't exist. Everyone was closed-minded for themselves. We certainly didn't have all these conferences that we have today. We didn't have all these networking events. We didn't have all these Facebook groups, podcasts, etc. So I think as someone starting today, they're lucky in the sense that now exists. So I think that if you're going to come and tell me that you're giving up because it didn't work for you, my number one question to you is, how else did you try to learn? Who else did you try to learn from? What else did you ask? What other questions did you ask? Because if you're going to tell me that you didn't take the opportunity to network and use those free resources that are out there, my answer to you is, okay, you can quit, but I think you're missing something that can really help you. And my advice would be to try to broaden your horizons, not just with communities that you feel you fit into by geographic, business model, religious belief. It doesn't matter. I'm talking about look at all the communities near and far, because you're going to find a diverse network of experience. And I would respect someone's decision to get out of the business much more if they were able to tell me that they've tried those different angles and they still didn't have success for A, B, C, D reasons. At least I know they tried, not just themselves, but they tried to help themselves.
Kollel Chabad. This is the 10th episode we've been telling you about Kollel Chabad, and we're just as passionate as the first episode. They now have a Pushka app if you want to give tzedakah on the go, right? And it's a Rameir Balanes tzedakah. So if you ever lose something and you say, I want to give $20 to Rameir Balanes tzedakah in hopes of finding the item, you can now do that simply from an app. How cool is that? They've been at this for over 200 years, helping Israel's neediest. You know the drill. Help support them. They create smiles on the faces of people who legitimately have no money. If they're not well, if they're older and they just have no resources, they will help them in so many different ways, and they're really good people. I saw a photo of the former ambassador of the U.S., David Friedman. He went to visit Kollel Chabad. They're available. You can do a tour there. You can help with your family. It's a really, really awesome opportunity. If you're ever in Israel, look them up. Tell them Kosher Money sent you. But try to give them, even if you stop listening right now or while you're listening, download the app. Go to the App Store and search Kollel Chabad, Pushka, Kollel Chabad. Your money's going to go to a really good place, and there's nothing more to say. So do it quickly, and even do it often. You can do a recurring donation of $5 a month, and before you know it, you'll be receiving nachas reports, happy photos of the people that they're helping. It's a really, really cool way to give back if you have the money to do it. Now back to this week's episode. I once joined a Telegram chat made up of Amazon sellers, and you mentioned PL as private label. There were so many acronyms in there. I had no clue what was going on, but there was this sense of community where people were helping other people that were new to the chat were being helped by veterans in the industry, and that was kind of cool. I imagine there's a lot of competition, but there's a lot of close-knit community feel to it all. Is that a good way of describing it?
Yeah, I think it's beautiful to watch. You go to any conference, which I like to do, and meet clients, and there's something really, really nice about it. I think it evolved over time because when everybody was doing retail arbitrage or online arbitrage, where they were going literally from store to store, you might have met your neighbor or your friend doing the same exact thing, right? Where now people are a lot more sophisticated, and they're doing the private label, right? They're not afraid they're going to bump into somebody that's doing the same exact thing as them. And I think there's so much to learn as, if I'm selling, gift baskets, and somebody's selling, linens, there's so much I could learn without, taking away any of the industry secrets. So I think that because it matured the audience, or rather the industry, I think it made people more comfortable with being able to share. And yeah, it's very nice. I mean, you could reach out to most people. Like I'll have it so many times where, even today we had a client that called in. They wanted to know that they could put onto Amazon labels, certain, like a bunch of SKUs. I had no idea what the answer was. Mm-hmm. So I suggested to, this account manager that had the question come in, call one of the clients that you have a good relationship with and ask them, could they help? And they're like, sure, let's get onto a Zoom, and they help the person out. It's so nice. I have this all the time. People have questions. How do I do something? I'll get a client on the phone and they'll help that other client out. So it's very nice.
Sorry, when we started this Prosper show, again, it was to address this issue that there was never help or support. And I'm sure you guys remember, you used to have these guys who walk around and their badge was backwards.
Yeah. Because,
they didn't want to tell you their company. I still have it sometimes, really, where I say to someone, what do you sell? And they're like, I don't talk about that. There's so many ways where I could just analyze Amazon, as discussed before. It doesn't really matter if you tell me what you sell or don't. But then when it was like Wild West, like if you told someone what you sell, like I sell power banks, like they were going to go source it.
Wow.
But on the contrary, again, there's always greedy or selfish people, but Most people are helpful. They like to help. There's Telegram groups, there's WhatsApp groups, there's Facebook groups. At Prosper this year, or even last summer, it started as a small show. I don't know, there must have been combined 20, 30 after parties, 40 networking events, masterminds, like thousands of people that came just to go to groups, not to the show. That's like so different than I ever imagined. And it's nice because there's so many groups you could join and you could learn like a school how to do everything, from A to Z. And they're all out there. You could Google them. It's really amazing.
I just would add to that part about the conferences themselves. Like Eitan said, if you go there with the mentality of there's nothing in the tracks for me, I can't resonate with anything that's being presented here, you can't worry about that. In the sense that's the probably, I would almost say 10 out of 10 people that I talk to and I ask what was the best part about X conference, Y conference, is the networking.
Yeah.
Forget the topics. I mean, they have the topics there for to try to drive some kind of audience, but
You can learn that on YouTube anyway, I would imagine. You don't need a session.
You can and you can't, but the fact of the matter is there's nothing to replace real, authentic conversation, business owner to business owner. That's the true nature of the game. I mean, you can throw the best world-class speakers on stage, and we have a lot of them in this industry, but the fact of the matter is anyone who's presenting on stage is coming to you with a pre-scripted agenda of what they want to talk to you about. When you are networking with someone face-to-face or in a group setting or a dinner or what have you, you never know what's going to come up, and you're learning from each other, and it's all of a sudden it's not scripted. Like this podcast is, sure, we have some talking points, but none of this is scripted. We're giving you our feedback that's certainly different than yesterday and certainly different than we had planned in certain aspects, but that's what makes it good. I think that's what will resonate with everyone listening to this, is the fact that, what you're listening to today, think about that, 100x, 1000x, whatever, when you go to these conferences. I mean, there's so much to learn, and 3-4 days will go by in a flash.
It's no secret that as a buyer, or a seller rather, communicating with Amazon is sometimes difficult. They're a behemoth. The performance teams that you've mentioned. Do you think that this sense of community was formed as a byproduct of that relatively closed door on Amazon side?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's sort of like it's us against Amazon, which is crazy, right? Because everybody's profiting off Amazon, but that's sort of like that. There's that feeling all the time is like, how do we fight the beast? Like, how do we figure this out? And yeah, I see that all the time in these communities where it's like, oh, you need a plan of action, which is basically when the seller performance team reaches out that, you have an issue with a listing or your account, people will share their plan of actions all the time and say, you should write this and you should write that. Don't word it in this way. But it's sort of like talking to a robot. And, we discussed this, that it's sort of like the IRS. You can't pick up the phone and speak to them. You can't understand from them exactly what their issue is. You have to literally like reading a piece of Gemara. Like you have to read between the lines. And it's almost impossible to know what they want. And it would be impossible if you wouldn't have people to talk to about it. So when you have a community behind you that has already dealt with this issue and you say, look, this is what I'm dealing with, and you have 100 people or, how many people are on these groups? There are thousands that will say, I've had the same experience and this is how to deal with it. Or there's even these, bigger networking situations where they will escalate it in a big way and bring it to the attention of Amazon, where Amazon doesn't want to have like a PR nightmare. And all of a sudden they'll be like, oh, this is going to be in the news soon that we shut somebody down without a legitimate reason. And they'll open them up for these reasons. And that's communities and sellers coming together and actually, escalating in a way that they help each other out.
One of the things that gets asked commonly, to Pearl's point, is that, why does Amazon turn a cold shoulder in a lot of situations to their sellers? Because their sellers supply the goods, which then goes to the buyer, and they need them for this cycle to work. I bring this up almost every time I'm talking on a podcast or at a conference with people who are not in the business yet or are new. You need to understand the Amazon Flywheel. You can Google it if you want to look at it. There's an actual image of it. It's basically Jeff Bezos's vision of the company when he started it. And there's a lot of points on it, but the key element here is that everything revolves around the customer, not the seller, the customer. So if the decision that they're making doesn't positively impact the consumer, they're not going to make the decision. So if you're thinking about one thing as a seller saying, they should do this because it's going to impact, it's going to help me and it's going to make me successful, whatever. If it doesn't have a net positive result for the buyer, it doesn't matter to them. Right, wrong, or indifferent, that's just the way the business operates. The faster you accept that and understand that business philosophy, the better off you're going to be on Amazon's platform. Because too many times I see sellers who don't understand that mentality, think that they should be able to, they're king, right? Because they're a seller of doing X amount of volume or whatever. But the fact of the matter is, whether you're a seller doing $100 a month or $100 million a month, you're a seller. That doesn't matter. The volume does not matter. I'm sure there's different things that sellers get into at certain stages, but at the end of the day, you're a seller. If you ask Amazon, a seller doing 6, 7, 8 figures in revenue, Amazon cares more about that buyer who's paid $10 for an order because they're a customer.
Yeah.
That's the truth.
Cool. It's interesting. You mentioned how the buyer is in control, right? And our audience, I would say 100% of our audience is buying on Amazon. What tips do you have in mind that a buyer should keep in mind when they're purchasing on Amazon? I tell you, I stay away from the sponsored links just because I feel like I'm being marketed to and it's not necessarily the best product what I'm looking for. I'll look more organically. Should consumers be looking at reviews more closely? I know I'm swayed if a product has a cool video with it, I'm sold. You have invested the time to show me all 4 angles of the product, purchase, buy now. What should buyers keep in mind to better use Amazon? And to piggyback off that, are there things people should not buy on Amazon and better buy it from a brick and mortar or another place online?
I think we spoke about fulfillment before. So we spoke about FBA, fulfilled by Amazon. So the alternative is MFN or merchant fulfilled, where you actually ship it to the customer. Mm-hmm. To your point before, that's cool. You can do it. But everyone got spoiled, right? I get this product the next day. So if I order a product from you and you're not FBA, you're just shipping it from your house, you have good reviews, I'll probably get the product. It's going to take me 5-6 days. I'm not saying people shouldn't order that, but what you don't have is this Amazon guarantee or promise. So they may suspend the seller, or if they continue to ship poorly or damaged or whatever. But if it's in fulfillment by Amazon, it's as if you're buying it from Amazon, which is why it's amazing. It's an amazing program.
So you'll get your money back.
You get your money back.
FBA.
There's a guarantee. You can return it with no problem. So I'm not saying people should not buy from non-FBA, but FBA is just easier, less risk, etc. And that's just a speed, convenience thing. There are some products that are really big, bulky, sophisticated that are not an FBA that you certainly could look to purchase. Then it goes into kind of your reviews question and videos and images. Most sophisticated sellers work to enhance their images and content because you basically have one shot in the search to show how you're great, and videos are better, and it's a very big thing now. So it doesn't mean the other product is worse, but from a seller perspective, the more you can do to beautify and explain why your product is great, the more you'll sell. So those are just two of the points.
Hold on, I wanted to piggyback off that because
While you're thinking of that, I'll add that from your marketing question, when you said you tend to avoid sponsored products, I could see why you do that, because Amazon has this mentality from a lot of buyers that a lot of this is fake, and surely there's issues on the platform with reviews and things being manipulated. That's no question. But I think you also have to understand that Amazon, the success of an Amazon seller and the success of a product is heavily dependent on ads these days. So most often than not, any seller who's selling a product is going to do some kind of ad targeting somewhere. So I do think it's a bit aggressive to say you would avoid ads completely, because that's just kind of how the platform is built and how it's successful. There's just a certain amount of caution that has to be used with that. That's all I would say with regards to the ads front. One other point that I would bring up from a buyer perspective, this is more of a trick. If you wanted to
love
try
tricks.
it, yeah.
Go ahead, lay it on me.
If you've got a product that's listed on the platform, or you're buying a product, I should say, if that product has multiple sellers offering that product, those sellers will compete for what's called the buy box, which is that featured spot on the listing page that says, sold by XYZ company, fulfilled by Amazon, whatever. But usually under that seller, there's a link that says this product is available from all these other sellers. It could be 2, 3, 4, 5 more, maybe more, it depends. If in fact you go to add that product to your cart from that featured buy box seller, the one that has that buy box, and let's say you add it to your cart and it says, oh, it's going to be there in 3 days. And you said, oh man, I wish I could get it in a day or 2 days. Add that offer from multiple sellers into your cart and you'll see which one comes up as faster. Because a lot of times those different sellers' inventory is in different locations at Amazon. So if you add those to your cart and then you go to mock a checkout, you'll see which one gets you fast and you can buy that one.
Oh, interesting. Let's talk about returns. I saw an article recently that some retailers are foregoing returns because there's a real cost to having to pay for the shipping and being busy with that. They'd rather you keep the product. I know when I get an Amazon product, if it's under a certain amount of money and I don't really have use for it, I'm not going to spend an hour or two trying to figure out how to return that product. So one question is there an easy way for a consumer to return a product hassle-free? And B, how do you guys look at returns and reimbursements and things of that nature, which I'm sure is a key component for an Amazon seller?
So I actually have a company that I'm an investor in that does like returns management that I started like a while back. And now I actually focus on reimbursements, which is more on the seller side. But back to my story, I bought a phone case and my fault, I bought the wrong phone case. It was like a Pixel 6 instead of a Pro. Have to return it. So this morning I went to Amazon, click return. They give you a barcode, you go to UPS store, or if something, that was my fault, right? If you're honest about it, which you should be. If you're not, and you say, oh, it was your fault, or if it really was Amazon's fault, they'll come to your house for free, pick it up. It's pretty hassle-free. They're extremely, to Eddie's point, customer-friendly. So no matter what, the customer's right. On my returns business, we get, and Pearl knows this too, crazy returns with wrong items and you name it, and Amazon doesn't care. So the point is, if you're a seller, you have to really be careful what your return rate is. For a lot of these private label products, which we spoke about, that are $20, $30, they have no resale value. So they sit, Amazon charges for the storage, and then you pay a company to send it back and to refurbish it. It's just not worth it. Unfortunately, what most people do is they dispose it. Maybe Amazon will give it to charity. But there's a whole underworld of returns. There's many articles about it, to your point, and it's not so easy. If it's a low-end private label item, you should probably have Amazon destroy it, which is a sad reality. If it's a high-end item, like a microphone like this, you can't do that. So you need processes in place to send it back to the vendor or to refurbish it. And there's companies that do it. But, if you're living, let's say in Israel, and you're selling brands into US from China, like how are you going to manage returns? It's a very big hole in the supply chain, and people, as e-commerce grows, everyone focuses on growth scale, but no one thinks about the dirty, messy stuff. So I think for the customer perspective, it's super easy, and that's why all these retailers are getting hit, because they don't know how to handle the flood, and it's a big problem.
What are buying groups, and what should our audience know about it? I don't know if you three are the right people to ask, but I do know I have some friends that are involved in these WhatsApp chats where they're buying inventory together collectively in large amounts, and maybe they're flipping it or getting stuck with it, and sometimes they are making money. Is that a feasible, logical, smart way to get into Amazon, or should people stay away from that completely? It's called a buying group.
Yeah,
Is
I know a lot about it. I don't know if you want to comment.
Yeah, I'll take it, I guess.
For better or worse.
At the risk of making new friends and enemies, I'll take this one.
Go for it.
I don't think they're worth anything, honestly. I don't think it's beneficial. I mean, I think...
What is it for those that don't understand? Did I describe it well?
Yeah, I mean, you did. I mean, a club is basically a group of sellers becoming together to either pool their funds together or share deals they find in terms of viable products to sell that are profitable, or it could be a range of different things, right? When you start pooling, well, first off, when you start introducing other sellers as friendly as they might be to you to inventory that is available to all of you, you're essentially bringing in competition, friendly competition, if you want to say, to a marketplace that, if you were doing this on your own, you wouldn't have that. So, I like friends. I have a lot of them in this industry, but there are certain things you just wouldn't tell your friends when it comes to business, and that's, I think, one of them. The other thing is when you are pooling money together to try to buy a deal or an opportunity, I think it could potentially become hairy in the sense that, you don't know everyone's details in terms of their personal finances, what they need, what kind of ROI they are looking for, what their risk tolerance is. Everyone's got different needs at home, and you're not going to be in the same level playing field with that, regardless of what someone tells you at a conference or in a WhatsApp group. So I think the chances of things going downhill because of that aspect is much more realistic. In that regard, that's why I say that things like that are, in my personal opinion, probably not the best idea.
Understood. I know Prime Day is coming up, and I heard Amazon's even going to do something closer in December to the holidays times. Piggybacking off this idea of helping the consumer, is Prime Day something consumers should actually get involved in? I know it's pretty biased because I'm sure you guys would love people to buy more on Amazon, but a deal is a deal only if you need the product, right? I always tell them you can save 100% of your money if you don't buy something you don't need. Should people actually take a serious look at Prime Day, or it's just a Hallmark holiday?
It's a good question. I mean, it's interesting to see it from the seller's perspective and the buyer's perspective, right?
Right.
So I personally, Prime Day, I haven't seen anything that I really, really wanted. What it ended up what it became is sort of where Amazon is, selecting which things they want to put on sale, and it's like a category for itself. And it's not like you're going onto Amazon and everything is on sale. And it's almost as if they're ignoring every other item that they have listed on their website. So the complaints coming in from the seller's end is that don't expect anything major to happen on that day unless you submitted certain items to have a special running, or Amazon actually gave you that offer. So it really depends on what you're looking for. I went on as a buyer, and I'm like, nothing interesting.
Nothing here, right?
But then there's going to be those people that are like, oh wow, this is a nice this is a nice deal. It's not like Black Friday that like literally everything is on sale.
And let's talk about Black Friday. Is Black Friday something that you see a huge bump in Amazon related business? Has that dissipated over the years?
I have many brands that Black Friday, Cyber Monday is a bigger sales day than any day in December. By revenue numbers. Certainly December as a month still outpaces those two holidays, but if you look at it from a day-by-day perspective, I have many brands that one of those 2 days, or potentially both those days, are their top 1 or 2 of the year. That's, I think, what buyers just have become acclimated to in this industry of just, it's Black Friday, Cyber Monday, there's a deal, got to buy something.
You
right?
have to, yeah.
You have to. If you didn't buy something, you didn't do it right? But I will also tell you on the same token, on the seller side, that most of my brands don't reduce their prices on those holidays. There's something to be said about deals, of course, but there's also something to be said about just how you display your price point. A product that's displayed at $20 is going to sell less effectively than something that's at $19.99. It's a penny difference, but you're going to see likely a dramatic difference in sales because it's that Walmart effect, right? It's $19.97. That's a lot cheaper than $20. It's really not, but it's the effect. Buyers like the idea of a deal. If I've got a product that sells for normally, $32.99, I can put it at $32.99. But if I sell it for $34.99 and then give you a $2 off discount code, I'm still selling for the same price, but that's a deal to the consumer, right? Oh, it's $2 off today. I got to buy it today. There's marketing tricks with that, right? Even off e-commerce, why is McDonald's straws so big? Because you drink the drink faster. There's a whole marketing aim to this, right?
Wow.
Yeah, I mean that's the reality here. So consumers will follow what consumers do, but that doesn't mean that the sellers are necessarily offering the best deal.
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway is marketing. It's all about the marketing with Amazon. If somebody wants a takeaway from today's podcast, it's all about the marketing. Bottom line, your product could not be the most amazing product. It's the packaging, it's everything around it that will make it.
Eitan, what are some resources, websites, people that want to learn more about this? Maybe they do know a lot, but they want to extend their learning. Where should they go to learn more?
So there's a lot, but I think that like there's a few different ways to break it down. There's courses. There's a guy named Brandon Young. He has a course called Seller Systems. It's probably the best course in my opinion. You could learn everything and anything about private label, branding, advertising. It's like a university.
We'll link to that course in the show notes.
Yeah, it's great. Again, that's like one of 100. There are a lot of snake oil salesmen as well, so you got to be careful at what you watch and what you check out. But that's a good course as far as learning. And then there's a company called Helium 10 that has great resources. A lot of private label startup companies use that website and their tools to do many, many things. Again, there's these trade shows that we mentioned. The list goes on. But I think courses is one section. Then there's like these mastermind groups, which is another. Then there's just like content and blogs. I mean, you could watch YouTube all day and learn a tremendous amount. My word of caution is there's a lot that's just not accurate.
Right.
Or
So
it's
you need,
outdated.
or it's
Right.
or it's out there. You need trusted sources because to Eddie's point, things change every day. So it has to be a recent podcast or piece of content.
And none of these virtual aspects, whether it's a course or YouTube or a forum or a group, replace the true value of in-person networking or
True.
something like that. That's really where you're going to stay at the top of your game. If you're going to invest money in a course or something to train you on this business, you better make sure that it's from someone who is a seller. There are way too many people in this industry right now that are not sellers and they're marketers. There's a huge difference. This guy is great at creating YouTube content, fancy videos that, display and pivot and all this stuff. And it looks phenomenal. And you've got the testimonials and it's, whatever, right? It looks great to you this guy knows what he's talking about, right? But at the end of the day, they probably couldn't explain to you what FBA even is.
He's making money off affiliate links and his.
Yeah.
And the marketing
YouTube
aspect.
channel,
The people that are the courses that are truly the good ones are the ones where the course content creator, whoever they are, truly are sellers. Not has been a seller 5-10 years ago, because with no disrespect, if you didn't sell in the last 5-10 years, to try to claim you're an expert in selling today specifically is a tough pill to swallow, because it's changed so much. You could be in e-commerce, that's no question, but as a seller specific expert who's trying to train other people, if you haven't sold for 5 or 10 years, that's not acceptable to me to be able to portray yourself as a selling expert. You're an e-commerce person, that's fine, it's different. Similarly to these people who are internet marketers, they know how to market a course, how to sell you a course content of stuff. But is that content good? That's the other question.
Understood. I want to end off with some closing remarks. Piece of advice you may have for a seller, a buyer, maybe a book you've read. You've mentioned some courses, something people should do in 2022, 2023. I'm hoping this content's relevant in 5-10 years as well, because I do think we spoke more holistically about the business, that unless Amazon comes out with a flying car and completely pivots.
Might happen.
Yeah, you never know, right? By the way, do you all have Amazon Prime? You use that?
Oh, of course.
Yes.
What about Walmart Plus? Do you?
Nope.
No. Right. So it's interesting how Amazon has really taken over the world. I think they're now the largest shipping company in the world. What are your closing remarks, a thought, something that people should chew on in no specific order?
I guess I'll start by saying, treat it as a real business, right? I think it's something that people think, they could do it out of their basement, not have a normal schedule, wake up late, go to sleep late. I mean, treat it as a real business, right? And I like to talk about the EOS model. I'm in no way an affiliate. I don't get money.
What's EOS?
So EOS stands for the Entrepreneurial Operating System. Basically, it's a process on how to run your business. So, having a clear accountability chart, a hierarchy of exactly, who does what in your organization, and, what you do with your data. How do you progress based on data that's coming in or out of the company? Having a vision. And of course, going back to the people, right? And how valuable your people are. So it's something that I focus on a lot in our business. And I feel like that's, a lot of the reason why we're able to move forward in a good direction. And when we don't, we could take a hard look and see exactly what's not working. So that's something that you could implement in any business. And I know you mentioned it to Eitan. I don't know if Eddie, me, and you had a conversation about it yet, but if somebody wants to read more about it, they could read the book called Traction Tools. And
Love that book.
Yeah, that's EOS. There you go.
I got into it. I created that plan. I forget the exact word that they call it, but I never had a good I never hired an implementer, which I think is very critical in order to be successful with EOS, not just from accountability, but best practices. So maybe we can talk offline about how I can implement that. But yeah, EOS, there's conferences associated with it.
Yeah. I didn't get to go to one yet.
No, yeah.
Definitely,
it sounds like that's your trajectory.
Oh, absolutely.
Wait, you mean
I'm obsessed.
there's conferences outside of Amazon? No way.
Yeah, right? It's Prosper. When's the next, or how often do you have these Prosper shows, and how can people learn about that?
I don't run the show anymore, but it's every year, usually in March or April.
Mm-hmm. Good.
ProsperShows.com.
Awesome.
I think my biggest piece of advice for the listeners and my fellow business owners or would-be business owners is that as you start this business, let me take a step back. It's a lot easier to build a business from 0 to $1 million than $1 million to 3 or 3 to 10.
Yeah.
You'll see as you grow, your problems and your pain points become not, I wouldn't say more severe, but they become more numerous and tricky. Things to navigate. While you're traversing those waters, you have to not let yourself, one person, be running in your business. You can't be running just the day-to-day operations yourself for every little aspect of it. You have to work on your business. There's a difference between in and on, right? You want to be on, not in. My advice to people is to make sure that you don't go too long in the process working in your business to where you cannot get out of it. Ultimately, if you want to sell a business and the only value is you, it's not worth anything. Because if you're out of it and that business can't run, no one's going to pay you for it. So it's really something that I think business owners, especially new ones, don't think about. They don't think, oh, it's not important, I'm just getting started. Actually, that's the best time to think about it, because you're not trapped in all these different things that are going left and right, sideways at you, right? So the earlier you think about something like that and try to, as time allows and as finances allows and everything else, to try to separate out and push out the tasks of running your business to other people and having that support team built up for your business to allow you to grow it, is going to be really, really important. You'll find that when you're at, if you get to that $1 million mark, when you want to take it to 3, 5, or 10, you're going to need all the time in the world to do those things, to pull those levers to get to that volume of sales. And if you're still doing the stuff that is repetitive to just keep the wheels turning, you're never going to have the time. So my suggestion to that is literally write down what you're doing every single day. Look for patterns. Just do it for a week. Write everything you've done, but in order, what you did in the day, and circle what's repetitive. Those things that you're circling as repetitive, you should be able to offload that to somebody else. You as a business owner should be doing the creative, innovative things that require you to think outside the box and convert those into processes, really. That's something critical, I think, that people need to understand about.
Yeah, I just want to say in EOS, they call that delegate to elevate. That's
I like
really
that.
what it is. Delegate to elevate.
Yep.
There's no way otherwise.
Right.
Yep. You cannot, as a business owner, you cannot do everything. It's not possible.
Yeah, it's not even just Amazon specific.
No, it's. I mean, there's so many aspects to an Amazon business that apply to just any business in general. That if you were there's only 24 hours in a day, and surely you're not working every one of them.
Right.
There's an aspect of work-life balance. It's unhealthy to be working all the time and have no time to yourself, or no downtime, no ability to take a vacation, to take a break. We're human, right?
Right.
So, certain humans have more tolerance than others, and so sometimes it depends on needs, right? But at the end of the day, you can't be trapped under your own the weight of your own business.
Understood.
Yeah.
Eitan, any closing remarks, advice?
Yeah.
I like how you've shared so many practical things in this episode. What
Sure.
do people think about practically?
Yeah, I just want to keep with my theme of positivity. Not
Go
that
ahead.
anyone's trying to be negative, that it's very hard to be successful on Amazon. Just like it's very hard to start any business. I think like the amount of businesses that stay in business after a year is like, I don't know, 10, 20%. That means 80% of people fail. And if you do get into this, you probably will fail many times. I have for sure. Most of these influencers and people online don't talk about the failure, but it's definitely there. There's cash flow shows, there are issues, there's account suspension, so it's not easy. But I don't think any business is easy. And I think that while there's these challenges, Amazon and online, especially now, I mean, it's still in its infancy. So there's competition and all the detractors that we mentioned, but there's so much opportunity. Like I've seen people we have clients like literally 4 or 5 dudes in their basement doing hundreds of millions of revenue on Amazon. And they're making a ton of money. It's not so common, but it is doable. And where else can you just go to a platform? And, little aside, but just for this community, there was an article in, I forget what, but it was why is the Orthodox Jewish community, why are there so many Amazon sellers, which I'm sure you may get asked a lot. And I actually commented to the reporter. But one of the answers, there's a bunch of answers, but one of the answers was a lot of people in the community, depending on their level of education, don't necessarily have so much education. That depends on who, right? Don't have a college education, but a lot of Amazon is data, right? It's like Talmud, it's like analysis, it's thought. You don't, for better or worse, you don't have to go to China or meet anyone in person. You can be in your basement if you so choose. I don't
Or
necessarily
the first
recommend
floor or
it.
second floor. We don't want to.
You could be in the third floor.
Yeah.
You could be on your patio, and you could. I know guys they have like $40-50 million revenue businesses with a strong margin that work at home that never see the light of day. I mean, they're by themselves. That's what the new world offers. But like specifically in this community, where not everyone has a degree, which is fine. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion religiously, whatever it is. This is something that with the right sharp mind and hard work, you can make a lot of money. And that's the bottom line. That's why a lot of people are doing it. That's why a lot of people are into it. It doesn't mean that everyone can do it. Everyone should do it. And to your point before, you have to know when to stop or when to start.
I want to add one point because I have a brother that just went into business now, and he sees the level of success with people around him, and there's this sort of like a desperation that you want to get to a certain level, but you want to skip through all the hoops, right? And I was telling him, remember that everybody has a book, right? And you're seeing the cover and you're seeing the back page. Don't forget, there's so many chapters to get to the end of the book, right? And there's so much work and there's time, and it feels like everybody's able to make it but me. But remember, people actually, like Eitan said, there are so many failures that people go through to get to where they're getting to, and nobody got there without failing 100 times or more. So you'll get there if you're okay with that, but don't have this anxiety that like I need to get there tomorrow. It takes time.
And also I think that it's important to note that as a business owner, like I mentioned earlier, it's important to get out of your environment, your work, your office, your warehouse, wherever you're set up. Basement doesn't matter. I know just for me, I took a few days off and was out of town the last few days, but because it's been so long since I was able to get out of my everyday environment, you think about things that you don't think about when you're doing your day-to-day grind. It's natural. And I think that sellers, and as you progress in this business, not so much as brand new because you're still soaking it all in, but as you progress and you build, especially, to take the time out to take a step back and really evaluate your next step is critical, because being locked in your same environment day in and day out doing the same stuff, you're not allowing your mind to explore those different areas. And you're doing yourself a disservice by not allowing yourself to expand on that. So really critical.
Yeah, we'll share all of your contact info in the show notes if people do have questions, comments, feedback, criticism. We accept it all, and we thank you all for coming down today.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Hope you enjoyed this episode on Amazon. We're going to put their email addresses in the show notes. So if you have any follow-up questions, want to network, reach out to them, please do. We're also going to give you a little bit more of a bio and their websites. If you are a new listener, viewer of Kosher Money, please subscribe to us on YouTube, like our videos. If you're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever it is, subscribe, follow us, leave a 5-star review. It really helps us in the ratings, and we cannot thank you enough. If you have a guest suggestion, head over to livinglchaim.com, click on the suggestion tab, and let us know who you'd like to see on an upcoming episode of Kosher Money. We've got some exciting episodes for you. We're doing an episode on Meiser, how to give charity. We're doing an episode on working less, earning more. We're doing an episode on investing in a recession. Exciting stuff, and a lot of these ideas came because of people like you. But until next time, keep your money kosher. I'm Eli Langer, and I'm out of here.
Living L'chaim.